Thank you, Sheikh, for giving us your time.
Thank you.
And speaking to us today. The first question I will ask is about the situation in Syria. And do you think there is effective coordination between Hezbollah, the Syrian Arab army, and the Russian Air Force in particular in the fight against Daesh and Nusra?
In the name of Allah, the Compassionate, the Merciful, the coordinated action in Syria of the Syrian army, Hezbollah, Iran and Russia has been a great contribution to the major achievements in driving away the Takfiri terrorists from many areas of Syria. If it were not for this coordination, Syria would not have been able to remain standing for 6.5 years. The Syrian forces that are fighting the Takfiris are a united front and have been able to achieve much success.
What is Hezbollah's position on President Assad? Does Hezbollah want to keep him in power after the war is finished, or what is the vision for the future?
This war against Syria was started with the purpose of overthrowing President Assad in order to change Syria. A defiant state was to be replaced with a state acting along the American-Israeli plan. Assad is not just a formal leader, but the real leader of the country and the commander-in-chief of the Syrian armed forces. He represents the Syrian people who continue their resistance. This is the significance of President Assad as we see it. From day one of the Syrian war, Hezbollah has been saying that any scheming that aims to remove Assad hurts Syria's interests. We cannot accept this because the Syrian people elected their own president. Bashar al-Assad was re-elected as president during the ongoing aggression against Syria. This makes him the legitimate leader and strengthens his position as head of state. We are convinced that Assad will remain president. His future will be decided exclusively by the Syrian people, and we will not accept any foreign interference on this issue. We support the choice of the Syrian people. When the elections are held, when Syria is completely free and its people are free to make their own choice without any external intervention, we will support any choice made by the Syrians. No one can predict the future right now and give any forecasts, whether positive or negative. It's crucial to give the Syrian people a chance to make their own political choice.
Now in Syria, America's goals have changed. They before wanted to get rid of President Assad, and now, especially since Trump, they say the focus is defeating Daesh. Do you think, and this has made Hezbollah and Iran stronger in Syria, will America accept this long term, you think?
America has suffered a defeat in Syria. Their priority was to remove Assad from power and to change the regime, but their plans collapsed on many sides. Their military presence, their support of opposition forces, and regional cooperation with the Arab countries that wanted regime change in Syria to serve Israel's interests. But now America has changed its policy. This policy now avoids direct confrontation with Assad because they simply cannot afford it. They understand that ISIL, which they supported, is acting against Syria and against the US. How can the US support a militant group which they cannot control and which does not do what they want? That is why President Trump decided to focus on fighting ISIL, but this didn't mean he became an Assad supporter. This means he wants to solve the problem of Islamic State, which has caused a global crisis. He wants to deal with this wild monster which they raised and tried to use to serve their own interests. It turned out that the monster attacked its master. I don't think the US has another choice. This doesn't mean they will begin to support Hezbollah and Iran. This just means that America's former policy collapsed, so it took another way according to their interests.
Why does the West in general fear or are scared of a stronger Hezbollah and a stronger Iran in the region?
The West wants to see the Middle East divided and caught up in feuds. This would weaken regional countries and allow the West to promote its policies and bring regional players into its sphere of interests, especially when you have Israel as an ally. The West believes that if Israel becomes a strong and influential state in the region, it could be used as a stick to beat other states into political, economic and cultural submission. When Hezbollah started the resistance movement in Lebanon, it was clear that it was spreading a new ideology that was not previously strong in the region. This ideology is focused on resisting the occupiers and liberating our homeland. There was a time when the USA and other Western states and Israel decided that the problem of resistance had been dealt with once and for all. That was thanks to Israel's attack on Lebanon. Yet Hezbollah proved that it was capable of winning the occupied territories back. Lebanon was liberated in May 2000. Thus Hezbollah strengthened the spirit of the Arab region as a whole, and among the Palestinians in particular. The resistance began to grow and mature, which brought about new challenges. All of this was happening with Iran's support. Therefore, the West decided that Hezbollah and Iran were trying to ruin their plans and resisting the Israel project, which the West sees as its foothold. Hezbollah has no hidden interests. What Hezbollah is trying to do is to liberate the territories seized by the occupiers and give them independence. It wants to see Arab and Islamic countries cooperate for the sake of their common revival. But the West wants these states to be weak and divided. Hezbollah came into being with Iran's support in order to serve as a springboard for future successes. These achievements would have been impossible without Hezbollah and Iran's support.
What do you think of Israel's role in Syria?
Israel is the main element in the process of destroying Syria. It actively supports the armed opposition, especially in South Syria, which is close to the occupied Golan Heights. The UN has provided factual evidence that over 3,000 militants were treated in Israeli hospitals. Also, movements have been tracked across the border between Syria and the occupied areas of Palestine hundreds of times. That's how the militants received supplies, ammunition and other aid. In addition to that, the Israeli Air Force delivered a number of strikes on the positions of the Syrian army and its allied forces fighting in those areas. This is how Israel wants to change Syria, to change its policy. But neither Israel nor its allies will succeed. This is why recently, when the agreement on creating de-escalation zones in southern Syria was reached, through the efforts of Russia and the United States, Israel began acting crazy, as some of its demands to have Hezbollah and Iran's presence removed from these areas were left unsatisfied. This made Israel realize that it will not be able to continue its interventions, since the United States and Russia reached an agreement on the aspects that contradict Israel's plans. Right now, Israel is participating in the destruction of Syria and wishing to cash in on the political situation and become part of the crisis settlement process. But I think Israel will achieve nothing in Syria, as ISIL is suffering defeat and the Syrian armed opposition has also suffered defeat. Even the United States and those who support it have been able to achieve nothing. At the same time, the Syrian army and its allies, supported by the Russian Federation, are making great progress. I believe that at the end of the day, Israel will gain nothing in Syria.
Israel will say they're just defending their interests because they are so close to Syria and that they have the right to defend themselves. What is your response to this?
Israel is an invader, and invaders have no right to talk about protecting the territories they have invaded. This right belongs only to those territories' rightful owners, such as Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and Egypt. These countries can claim the right to talk about protecting their territories. What Israel is doing in Syria is yet another act of aggression. Israel occupied the Golan Heights. It would have been right for it to withdraw from the Golan Heights and all other areas it is occupying, instead of claiming that it, Israel, is protecting its occupied territories by occupying more territories in Syria. I believe that Israel's logic is short-sighted. Major powers that support Israel's occupation projects, plans and ambitions are letting Israel behave in this way and dictate its terms. I expect that the people of the region will not let Israel get what it wishes and continue to occupy more lands. This has to be stopped, and the occupied territories have to be liberated.
Here's what people have been saying about Redacted tonight.
Give it to us.
Redacted is full-on awesome. The only show I go out of my way to watch every month. It really packs a punch. Lee Camp is the John Oliver of RT America.
They do have the same accent.
Hey, we are apparently better than boobs.
Nothing's better than boobs.
You see, people you've never heard of, love Redacted Tonight. The president of the World Bank, though, hates it. Seriously, he sent us an email.
When old truths seem wrong, when old rules just don't hold, and a new world is yet to shape out, disdain becomes the etiquette, and engagement equals betrayal. When so many find themselves worlds apart, we choose to look for common ground.
"18 years ago, I traveled across the United States, exploring America's deadly love affair with the gun.
If a bad guy tried to get to one of my family members, he would have better luck with a butter knife against a grizzly bear than hurting one of my babies."
Since my book was published in the year 2000, more than 500,000 Americans have been killed by firearms in the USA.
We had a SWAT team, yes we did. Yes, this was in middle school. We go through drills and we put ourselves in real scenarios. It was interesting to see who actually got hit by the paintball gun.
I decided to return to the subject, to track down each gun owner who I'd met and photographed those years ago.
I don't know the answer, but we are not the problem.
The shift in Jordan's position regarding the Syrian crisis happened due to the failure of the US-Israeli plan, of which Jordan was a part. We now see that Jordan is guided by its own interests. Given its position in the region and the situation in southern Syria, Jordan realized that it was necessary to open the corridor between Syria and Jordan as soon as possible in order to gain economic benefits and subsequently political benefits. So after its unsuccessful participation in the anti-Syrian project, Jordan was forced to take steps to ensure its interests.
In the last week, we saw that Hezbollah defeated Daesh in the mountains in Qalamun area, and they sent them to Deir ez-Zor. This caused a big issue. Doesn't this just move the problem of Daesh from one area to another? And people say we should never negotiate with Daesh. What's the position of Hezbollah on this as well?
In towns across Syria, the infrastructure of al-Nusra and ISIL has been destroyed. This deprived them of the opportunity to continue fighting. They surrendered. We, along with the Lebanese government, wanted to hold negotiations on the means of surrender because 8 Lebanese soldiers were missing, and we did not know whether they were alive or dead. We intended to save them, and a situation arose where we were able to learn about the fate of the soldiers. For more than 3 years we were not able to do this. Therefore we believe that we have gained in many respects. We have learned about the fate of the Lebanese soldiers, and the places of their burial have been located. The fighting ended, so we were able to avoid further loss of life. Also we managed to retrieve the bodies of some of our fallen comrades. One of our members who is being held prisoner by ISIL must be released in accordance with this agreement, so we achieved the best result at the lowest price, and in the end ISIL left the Lebanese-Syrian border. The movement of militants to another area, to Abu Kamal, was carried out in coordination with the Syrian government. These approximately 300 militants who will join the thousands of militants in Abu Kamal will not fundamentally affect the alignment of forces. The militants are already exhausted, and we know that the coming battle against them in that area will be very fierce. Thus, we did not create a new problem in that area. On the contrary, we rid the Lebanese-Syrian border of a very big problem after we moved the militants to another place, which will be liberated in a month or two.
Hezbollah released a statement that was because obviously the Americans are attacking this convoy, and they released a statement which said there are civilians, families and women and old people with Daesh in this convoy. Some of the critics and enemies of Hezbollah have said in the last few days that why is Hezbollah so concerned with civilians from Daesh, but they weren't concerned with civilians in Aleppo?
Hezbollah always stands on the side of civilians. We have never done anything to harm the civilian population. We avoided taking part in some battles in Aleppo, Homs and other areas, as there were too many civilians there. We gave them the opportunity to leave these territories, but ISIL and other Takfiri groups used people as human shields to hide behind. We have always tried to separate the militants from their families, and I want to remind you that Hezbollah managed to force the militants from Homs, where there was also a large number of civilians. As for Aleppo, we reached an agreement on the withdrawal of civilians. In several other places, Hezbollah helped a large number of people get to safety. We condemn the US for their aggressive actions towards the civilian population, as America wants to undermine the agreement and return these peaceful citizens to their relatives in the Abu Kamal region. The question arises, why does the US intervene in this way? Why do they want to use the civilian population as a human shield? In that case, what is the difference between the US and ISIL, which also uses the civilian population as a human shield? There is no excuse for this. We strongly condemn all such actions that threaten the civilian population, even if these peaceful citizens are members of Takfiri families, as they have nothing to do with the fighting.
What is your view on the cooperation between America and the Lebanese military?
We do not object to the Lebanese army getting supplies and weapons from any source except Israel. We have never had a negative attitude to the Lebanese army getting American weapons and ammunition. We are calling for the Lebanese army to purchase weapons from Russia, Iran and other countries so it can become stronger. But since there are no restrictions on the weapons' origin, we support any reinforcement of the Lebanese army's military capacity, even if it comes from the United States.
So in that case, is there any coordination? Because we know that Hezbollah have the equation, the people, the resistance and the army. Is there any contact or coordination between Hezbollah and the Americans, considering that they're both fighting Daesh, but at the same time America says Hezbollah is a terrorist group?
We believe that the United States, the world's major superpower, is aiding and abetting terrorists. This is the reason we do not coordinate our actions with the United States, and the United States does not coordinate its actions with us. It is not acceptable for us, and neither is acceptable for America. America supports Israel and wants the destruction of Syria and the entire region. Our position is the opposite. We support the resistance movement, the fight to liberate Syria from its enemies, for the sake of preserving the resources and capacities of our region, so that it can resist the American strategy. We represent different paths, so we cannot cooperate.
The West currently, as we said, has a negative view of Hezbollah, but do you think the West's view of Hezbollah is changing since Hezbollah has been fighting Daesh and fighting Nusra and all these other terrorist groups? Do you think now there is a more positive view of Hezbollah?
I believe that the West will gradually change its views. Even when the West says that in political terms our party is inclined to terrorism, they still do make a distinction between the political wing of the party and its military wing. This means that the West is stuck now between its political choice, which dictates that it must support Israel, and the real situation, where destroying countries that widely support Hezbollah is not an option. They don't know who to choose. In light of the victories achieved in Syria, Lebanon and Iraq, the political leadership of the Western countries will gradually change. Right now they are intimidated by America and are trying to follow its policies. If they were independent, the situation would have been different.
President Putin, the Russian president, he has once again repeated his call for a multinational coalition against international terrorism. Do you think such a coalition can be created, a real international coalition, and what are the challenges and obstacles which block this?
When President Putin calls for an international coalition to be created, he does so based on his serious and responsible approach to fighting terrorism. He has done a lot for this cause, and thanks to him the Russian army delivered some serious blows against the terrorists in Syria. He represents the forces that have chosen the right and responsible approach to eliminating terrorists. If he talks about an international coalition with the United States and other countries, these are at best formal, not serious statements, because it is the United States that has been supporting terrorism and helping it evolve and spread in the region. However, the US has also been suffering from terrorism, which means it's possible they might to a certain degree respond to this call. One way or another, this proposal made by President Putin has to be seen in a positive light. His further call for creating a coalition will put some countries in an uncomfortable position, but I do not think that the countries will reach an understanding on this matter, because they have different definitions of terrorism.
So now, unfortunately, there is a disagreement between the Iraqi side and the Syrian and Hezbollah side about Abu Kamal. Are you in contact with the Iraqi government and the Iraqi authorities? And what's your message to them? You know, how do you want to stop this situation from getting worse?
We have not come to a common position with the Iraqi government on what to do with the Abu Kamal situation. We believe that what happened there was based on the Syrian government's decision to let the militants move from one area to another. This is Syria's internal affair and does not require the agreement of any other party. We made a statement on behalf of Hezbollah where we pointed out the relevant facts, including the fact that these events do not concern the state of Iraq. Iraq is a heroic nation ready for self-sacrifice. They have fought much and suffered greatly from the Takfiri terrorists. They have achieved much in fighting Islamic State and pushing it out of many cities, including Mosul. We maintain contacts with people throughout the country on a regular basis. I don't think there are any problems between us and the Iraqi people, and we don't have any problems with the Iraqi government. The Iraqis are a peaceful people. They're fighting for their rights. We've seen many leaders of Iraqi political, religious and popular movements saying that Hezbollah's actions towards Takfiris in Lebanon were correct. As for the Iraqi government's statements, I don't think we should make a problem out of this. We'd like to interpret it as a minor disagreement which can be easily solved.
I suppose the last question is, what does the future hold for Hezbollah now?
We cannot say for sure about the future of Hezbollah, but we expect to see major victories and see our dreams come true. We plan to liberate even more territories. We're only a small part of a resistance movement which is now growing stronger. We hope that Syria will again become united and will choose the best way forward. And we hope that the whole of Iraq will eventually be free. We will continue the fight for our territories, and we also hope that the Palestinians will be able to get back their lands. Hezbollah has a bright future.
Thank you for his time, and I know you're very busy, and we spoke very much, but we would love to speak for 10 hours.
Thank you.